life. Meeting is now streaming. How are we going to know if we're actually live? I wonder.
Oh, it says live.
I know, but like, what if, can people see us? Can people hear us? Wait, I can see it on, it popped up on the other half of my screen.
Well, I can't see anything, so I will just take your word for it.
Okay, cool. Oh, that's good.
Hello, YouTube world. I can't see you, but if you're there.
Okay, we're live, Kelly. It's over there.
Yay.
I don't know. We're also lagging over there. So I think I'm gonna But see, Chantal is here. Hello, hello, hello. We're live.
I can't see anything.
It's happening. Oh, you can't see anything?
Mm-mm.
That's sad.
Unless, is there? Oh, did I just? I just muted myself. Yeah. Oh, okay, there. Well, it's fine.
You can also, I mean, you don't have to. It'll probably just people saying hi. Hi, people are saying hi, aka two people.
Hi. Hello, two people.
But you can also like split screen, Kelly, or pull it up.
Oh, that's too complicated.
Yeah, it's fine. I'll keep you in the loop if people, or I'll try and keep you in the loop if people are saying. But I guess, do you want to get started and if people pop in?
Yes, tell us about Self-Care Collaborative.
Well, first let's do intros and talk.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe, and what day it is and where we are.
I don't know those questions. I don't know those answers.
If you made it this far onto my channel, I'm assuming you know me, or maybe not. Maybe you heard about me recently from some of my friends. But I'm Brianna, and I am the human behind the Little Wolf Knits, yarn, candles, and designs, I guess now is a thing. And I am the ringleader, collaborator, main facilitator, I guess, of the Self-Care Collaborative 2020, which I will talk about in a hot minute. But I'm here with one of my friends, which I'm super excited about. She's an awesome maker in this community that everyone knows, and she needs no introduction. And she's my friend, so that's cool too. So introduce yourself.
And my face is already red. I'm Kelly. I'm the maker behind Knitbrooks, which is what do I do? I don't know. I'm a knitter and a crocheter and a hook and needle maker now, randomly. And yeah, I love being in the woods, and I love pizza and tea and handmade mugs like this
Beautiful.
one.
Where did you get the mug? Who's it by?
This is for a local potter from Nova Scotia, near where I live, on the East Coast in Canada, if nobody knows where that is. They don't have really an internet presence because they're a senior couple, but they're the best.
That makes it so much better.
I know, and they like carve these in to the mug. Wow. It's like carved. You can't tell, but
you can tell a little. I don't know anything about pottery, but that sounds really cool. Also, Kelly, Rachel's here, Krista's here, Wendy's here, Laura's here.
Hi, friends.
All the friends are here, so this is exciting. And since this is the first week of the Self-Care Collaborative, Kelly and I were just talking a little bit before we popped on and figured it might be helpful just to kind of give another rundown or more in-depth explanation to what the Self-Care Collaborative is, more than just like, these are the rules, this is how you post and get entered to win a giveaway, because that's part of it. And like, why not? Giveaways are cool, prizes are cool. But I'm also hoping that this becomes like a movement in our community. I don't know, that feels like a big word to say. I don't know if I'll say movement, but I hope it becomes something bigger than just another Cal, another make along. I'm a therapist by day, for folks who don't know, and a knitter always, and then all my side hustles by night. And so it's so important to me, and became so important to me, I think, especially this year, with everybody really struggling, whether that was personally or seeing people they love struggled in a lot of different ways. And Kelly, I think you brought up a really good point that like, in some way the world sort of forced us to slow down and sit back and do a lot of reflection. And I think people realize like, wow, self-care and taking care of yourself is so important. And then a bunch of us humans, especially folks in our community, were like, wait, I don't know how to do that. Or like, I'm not very good at doing that. And so I think my hope was this with this collaborative was to bring together and make space in our community for self-care, for why it's so important, giving people encouragement to do that, but also giving people space to like wrestle with how hard it is to take care of ourselves and talk about how we struggle and help each other and support each other through some of that. Because I think, I don't know, self-care sounds easy in theory and not so easy in life. And so I'm hoping that this becomes a space where we can do that and share with each other and support each other in the way that I think our community does. Darian's here. Hi, Darian. Guys, I'm going to be so distracted because I just see things popping up right there.
Hello.
Cool. And if you want the details about the Self-Care Collaborative, check out my post on Instagram. I'm the Little Wolf Knits. And there's some more details on a few of those. Also, if you check my last YouTube video, the episode before this one, I don't know what episode number that is, but it's November 5th today. So whatever the most recent one is before this, there's a little bit more detail on there. But enough talking. I'm here to interview Kelly, and that's the exciting thing. So Kelly, start with, I mean, you gave the basic intro to yourself, but I'm really curious because even being friends with you, I don't actually know too much about this part of your life. And I'm curious to hear more about like what your journey in this community has looked like, just kind of generally, even outside of like self-care.
What do you mean? Like from the beginning?
You can give us the cliff notes. It doesn't have to be all the details, but I think it's helpful to know where people are coming from and where.
Okay. Well, I kind of picked up knitting. Well, okay. So when I was 9 years old, my mom taught me how to knit, and I knit my grandma a scarf, and I worked on it for like 10 months to give it to her for Christmas. And then like I finally finished it, and it was in like horrible green and red, like sparkly yarn. And I finally finished it, and then our Dalmatian puppy ripped it to shreds before I could give it to her. And I didn't pick up my knitting needles again until I was in college because I was like so traumatized by the experience.
No.
But I picked it up again in college. I went to school for photojournalism, and it was kind of like a bit of a stressful program. So knitting was like a stress reliever, I guess. And then like a year later, I inherited my great grandma's crochet hooks. And between that and like not wanting to learn how to use double pointed needles to make a hat, I learned how to crochet because I was like, I will never use these scary like 27 needles to make something in the round. And I didn't know like what a magic loop was. And I didn't know like that you could get 16-inch needles. So I was like, crochet it is. So I taught myself how to crochet on YouTube like most people do. And then like 2013, I was working at a newspaper as a reporter and photographer, working like a bazillion thousand hours for like no money. And then knitting and crocheting were still like my stress reliever, but I also had like a giant pile of like 87 things that I'd made and like nothing to do with them. So I was like, oh, I should open an Etsy shop. So yeah, I did that. And then I discovered from there handmade markets. I went to a farmer's market and I was like, ooh, this is so cool. I should do that. So I like tried that. And then, yeah, I sold in like a couple of like stores. So I tried wholesale. I tried Etsy. I tried handmade markets. I tried like pattern design eventually, which I'm not like the best at, but it's fine. And then in like 2017, I tried carving a crochet hook out of a stick because I was like, why not? And then that kind of has like blossomed into what I'm doing now, which is handmade crochet hooks and knitting needles, and hopefully Tunisian crochet hooks and some other fun stuff in early 2021. But
Kelly.
yeah, I feel like that's my crafting journey anyway.
Mm-hmm.
And then along the way, I became like a huge workaholic and don't know what self-care is. So
No, but that's helpful, I think, to have the context of like, yes, I learned to knit very young, but it sounds like it really came back into your life way later as like, hey, this is some sort of stress relief or self-care or like taking care of myself. And so tell me, like, then the other part of your journey that you're talking about, like this self-care journey, what has that looked like for you? Also, people freaking out about the Tunisian.
oh well, Tunisian crochet hooks, maybe some double-ended crochet hooks. But yeah, so self-care has not entirely been a thing in my life. I think, especially being in like journalism where it's like so many hours, it's like working a 9 to 5 and then like evenings and weekends also.
Yeah.
And I also think like being this generation, like we have a really big like hustle mentality. So even though like knitting and crocheting were my stress reliever, they also like transformed from a hobby to a side hustle. And then it's like, it's hard to draw the line of like where the work ends and like, you know what I mean? Like where the hobby ends and the work begins. Cause like you're doing something that was once a hobby and like you really enjoy it. But then it's like you're always doing it. So is it actually relieving your stress or are you just like always hustling all the time?
Yeah.
Now I forget what your question is.
No, I think you're touching on it. Like, what has self-care looked like for you kind of over this span? And what I'm hearing is like it hasn't always been there or it's been pretty absent.
Yeah.
Be a little bit like of that personally, but I also hear this like, is that part of our generation? Is that part of our community that like, here's this thing I was doing to take care of myself and now it became another form of work?
Yeah. Well, I think again, like our generation, they're always like, how can I monetize this like hobby or something that I'm good at? Or, you know, like maybe it's because you need that extra income. Maybe it's because like society has put this pressure on us to always be like productive and like multitasking and like, just like always on the go. So like now it's like super unhealthy, but my brain is always thinking, even when I'm trying to relax, I'm like, okay, like I'm sitting here, like, how can I relax, but like also at the same time be like productive toward my business? Like, how can I make money? And it's not that I'm like a money obsessed person, but it's like, it's been put into my brain that that's like a positive thing to always be productive and like to fill my time to the max, basically. And I got so used to like, especially the last like few years before I moved to Nova Scotia last year, I was working like 3 jobs and I was part of like the Our Maker Life team, just like doing 1,000 things and like never actually stopping to rest and like even realizing that I needed rest.
Yeah.
That was a really long sentence, but I just have like so much to say on this topic because I'm like so bad at self-care. And this past year has like really made me realize not just the pandemic, but like moving to Nova Scotia, where the like the pace of life is a lot slower, and now I don't have 27 jobs. So it's like really forcing me. I find myself with like extra time that I could use to like relax and give myself self-care, but then I'm like sitting there so stressed out about like what I could be doing with the time that I'm not like actually relaxing. So it's like the spiral. You're like sitting there, like have your tea, got like your knitting beside you, put on Netflix, and then I'm still sitting there being like, maybe I should make a to-do list for tomorrow. Like maybe I should go out and like make a couple more hooks. Maybe I should check my email. And my brain like never turns off.
Yeah. Especially when I imagine like you own your own business. I'm starting to see a little bit of that. Like there's some like different pressure. And it sounds like what I'm hearing you say is there's a positive message we received about being productive. Like if I can be productive, that's good. That's good. But it sounds like the flip side of that coin is like, if I'm not being productive, that means something negative about myself, or like there's some ingrained message in there that we hear if we're not producing 100% of the time.
Yeah, it's like subconsciously you're thinking like, well, I don't like, am I lazy? Am I like wasting time? Am I like, what could I be doing to further myself and my business? So yeah, totally true. It's like all these subconscious thoughts that like creep their way up, and then you're just sitting there like, ah. And then your like hour of self-care has passed and you're like, well, I didn't relax and I didn't get anything done. So
And so, I mean, we're talking about how it's really hard for you to relax and take that time. And like, I guess the question I'm thinking about is, what does self-care look like for you when you're able to do it? Or what do you strive to do? Like, what does that picture of self-care look like for Kelly?
well, I think I mentioned before that like this year I've been thinking a lot about it, especially like between moving to a place that is like a lot slower, not having any more jobs except for my business, and the pandemic kind of like forcing everyone as a whole to slow down. I've been reflecting a lot on why I have such a hard time relaxing, and like what I would do if I could relax properly. I don't know. I guess maybe because like knitting and crocheting used to be the like a calming like stress reliever, but then eventually it turned into a business. So now I have like a weird relationship with my former like favorite hobby. I guess. I don't know. That's just like my own weird thing though.
Yeah, but that sounds so hard. Like having this thing that for a big chunk of my life, or even if it wasn't a big chunk, it was a really meaningful thing to me. And now it sounds like I don't even get to enjoy that. That doesn't even recharge me or rejuvenate me the way that it used to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it would. I just like don't give myself the time to rediscover my joy in it. So like that's my current mission, is to practice self-care without feeling guilty. So that's like my current endeavor.
Yeah.
Which I'm struggling with.
And I hear that struggle. Like I hear you being like, oh, this is so hard to do. And this year really made me realize how important it is. And I'm wondering if you could dig into more to like, why do you think self-care is important? Like other than, yes, people tell me that it's important to take care of ourselves. Like, why is that important to you?
Well, I think, well, for me, I didn't even realize how much I needed it until I stopped. Until I stopped, because I was just like always on the go, like doing something, filling my time. It's like a weird habit that I have to fill like all my time for some reason. But once I stopped, I kind of like crashed and was just so tired, like mentally and physically exhausted. And I was like, oh my God, I've just been like running for like 3 years straight and I didn't take any time for myself. And now I'm just like exhausted and don't have the ambition to do anything. So I feel like self-care is a really good way to like recharge your batteries so you can be present in your business or like your family, your friends. Because when I wasn't focusing on myself, a lot of the other areas of my life really suffered, like my relationships. Like I didn't get to see people, like my friends, my family, even like my partner Scott. We didn't get to see each other that often because I was just like always working and like on the go. And just like I said before, like mentally and physically, if you don't like recharge yourself, then everything around you is not going to be like, you're not going to be able to do everything as good as you could if you're not like, does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting because it sounds like part of your journey was actually not so much in like choosing to do things differently and like take care of yourself, but it sounds like your body really made you?
Oh yeah, my body just like rejected everything around me. It's like, no, it's like, here's a case of like strep throat. Here's like exhaustion. This is what you get. And I'm like, why am I so sick? Why do I not feel good? My body's like, are you sleeping and drinking any water and like taking that hour for yourself? And I'm like, why don't I feel good?
Uh-huh. Yeah, like I hear that piece, like there was like a physical like reaction. And I also hear like it impacted my relationships. I actually wasn't as productive in my work as I would have been if I was taking that time to recharge.
Yeah. So I know like a lot of people, I feel like a lot of people get stressed about taking time for themselves because they think it'll take away from other things in their life. But I think that if you do take that time, like you can't pour from an empty glass.
Yeah.
So like the more time you like put into yourself, the better you'll be to like be there for your relationships and be there for your business instead of showing up like half alive.
Yeah. Yeah, that idea that I think sometimes we think self-care is like a luxury or a privilege, or like taking bubble baths and drinking wine and doing face masks. And like, yeah, sometimes maybe, and other times maybe it's like eating dinner with my partner, getting 8 hours of sleep, taking a shower, like some of those basic things that like they're not a luxury. They're part of the process. And if you're not, I think about like the metaphor of a car. Like if you're not putting gas in your car, if you're not changing your oil, you're not going to get very far. As hard as you keep pushing the gas pedal, it's just not going to get
Yeah. Your car is going to stop and like maybe start smoking and explode.
Hopefully not explode, but it might.
It could.
And so I guess, I mean, Kelly, we're like talking about this, but I'm wondering if there's more or it's worth focusing on a bit. Like, we all know this, or I'm assuming most of us know this, right? Like, if anyone talks to a doctor or a therapist or a friend and they're like, what do I do? How do I take care of myself? And they said, well, you should sleep and eat and also like hug people that you love. And it's like, yeah, I know that stuff. But like, it seems like people are looking for a magic answer or like a quick fix. What do you think gets in the way of people just doing the basic kind of foundational things that you're saying? Like, yeah, I know I need to do that. I just was choosing not to.
Well, I think maybe it's because people don't prioritize themselves. Like people will say, oh, I don't have time. But whenever someone says they don't have time, it's that they're not making the time. Like that's not a priority.
Yeah.
So like when you say, oh, I don't have time to get 8 hours of sleep, like where does your rest fall on your list of priorities though? And I understand that like it's different for everyone. Like I don't have kids. So if I need 8 hours of sleep, unless I'm like sleep deprived, I can get 8 hours of sleep theoretically.
Yeah.
But like, I don't know. It's hard because everyone's situation is so different and everyone's needs are also very different. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, I think it does. Like, am I making time for it? Am I making it a priority? And it sounds like, to be honest, for a few years, you were getting along okay without doing it. Like maybe the fumes were starting to run low, but like you were pushing through and it was okay. So like that part of me understands like, oh yeah, why fix this if it's not broken? It's still working for me now. And it sounds like once it got to the point where like, oh, okay, this isn't working anymore, you really had to think about making that change. And I know I appreciate, Kelly, you bringing some of your identity into this space. Obviously, it's a conversation we have a lot, and like we're in a lot of those spaces together. But that feels important to recognize. Like, as a white woman without children who owns her own business, is it a bit easier to say like, oh, I can make these choices? And I don't know. I guess I'm just wanting to open that space and see if there's anything else there, like particular challenges that have come up for you and the identities you hold, or how you've been able to use some of like the privilege you have in working through and trying out some of like taking care of yourself and what that looks like.
Oh, I feel like that was a bunch of questions in like
It
one
was.
sentence.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I do that when I'm like, there's so much here. Let's just like.
Okay. Pick one. Pick one
Okay.
question.
So I guess talk to me about, you told us a little bit about like, this is what self-care looks like for me. And there's some recognition there of like, well, that's my identity. And I'm curious if you've ever thought like how that might impact things or change things if you had children or if you didn't have your own business, and like what some of the challenges might be for you in those circumstances. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, I'm definitely like, I guess, privileged and lucky in a sense. I don't want to say privileged to not have children, but like I have the luxury of like making my own schedule if I need to. So like I'm only responsible for myself. I'm not responsible for like other tiny humans that I need to like make sure survive each day. So yeah, I don't know. I guess I do have like a lot of privilege in that sense where I can take the time to figure out what self-care means to me because I don't have like distractions. I feel like distractions is a bad way to say what children are, but like I don't I don't have a bunch of little kids running around all the time.
I was going to say, I also cannot say that because I do not have children, but I imagine there might be some parents watching this at some point who might be like, yes, say it, Kelly.
Yeah. Those darn little adorable rascals who take up all my time. And I also have the privilege of like the area that we moved to in Nova Scotia is like super affordable to live. Like we decided to go like really rural. So like our mortgage is really low, and that kind of gave us like the flexibility to explore Nipbrooks as like a full-time thing now. Yeah. So like I know I'm super lucky in that sense that I have like all of these almost like luxuries to explore self-care because I'm not stressing about like where my next paycheck is going to come from. Oh God, what did I just do? Oh, low battery.
Oh no.
Oh my God. Hold on.
Okay.
Hold that thought. Oh God.
Also, Sana said a lot of laughing faces and said her children are distractions. So,
but probably super cute distractions.
Also true. Adorable distractions.
Don't mind me just like making a huge ruckus.
Rachel, can you still hear me, Kelly, while you're getting your charger?
I can.
Rachel's on here and she said form habits now so you don't have to think about setting them once you do have other responsibilities. Which is a good point. And, you know, we're talking about how you're lucky not having kiddos, but like you have a new fur baby and
yes, and I'm like barely surviving that. Okay.
And you have a partner that you have to consider as part of
but we're like so lucky that we get to work together. So like it's way better in comparison to what it was before because we only saw each other on weekends because I was working like 3 jobs. And like looking back, I wish I had not have been like hustling so much because I feel like I missed out on like growing our relationship to what it could have been at that point. But oh my gosh, I'm like out of breath because I ran to get that charger so fast. My phone was like 5%. I was like, oh my God.
I should tell people that being on Zoom like drains your battery. Sana said they were super cute until they became teenagers.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Also, Wendy asked me what I was drinking. You said you're drinking tea, Kelly. You're making me feel a little bit guilty.
Tea, what are you drinking? Beer? Well, had I known this was going to be a drinking party.
I'll have to tell folks next time. I'm drinking a local beer. So it's not as cool as your local pottery handmade mug, but it's a local beer from this tavern that's like not so far from my house. And this looks like a picture. But they have a really cool like local artist who does most of their graphics. And this is I'm not gonna lie, this is a half drink beer from last night that I fell asleep before I finished.
You party animal.
So Michael's like, how can you drink?
Scott just asked if I wanted a glass of wine.
Yes.
Yes, please.
The answer is yes.
Sorry.
I was just gonna say it's called Falling, and it's a sour ale with apple, cranberry, cinnamon, vanilla, and brown sugar. Very good.
That sounds amazing.
Really good. It kind of is like apple cider, but like beer.
Very autumny.
It is. It is very fall.
Side note, when I told Scott that I was doing this live and I was a guest about self-care, he like burst out laughing because he's like, I should be the one being interviewed because I'm the only reason you take any self-care. I was like, so true. He gets like mad when I am just like flailing and spiraling and being like working all the time. And he's like, sit on the couch and like put on Netflix and do your knitting and stay there. And I'm like, but, and he's like, no, go.
But I love that. I'm glad you brought that in, Kelly, because I don't know, sometimes it feels like, oh, self-care, I have to be like motivated and find some sort of internal drive to do this thing. And like, I don't know, maybe sometimes, and also maybe part of self-care is like building a community around you who cares enough about you to make sure that you're both taking care of yourselves. And like, I don't know, that sounds like that fits self-care. Like maintaining that relationship and feeding into that relationship is also part of taking care of yourself.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think for me, it's because I feel guilty about taking time for myself unless I've been like given permission, if that makes sense. So like Scott getting annoyed and like telling me to go and like play with yarn, I'm kind of like, okay, like I've clearly done enough work that I can like justify taking some time and like not doing anything productive with it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And then it's also like, where do you drop, like, it's my relationship with like what I feel is enough productivity, because I'm like a weird I'm like a perfectionist workaholic. It's very unhealthy. So I'm working on it though. I'm a recovering workaholic. Recovering. Oh my god, my face is so red. I'm like so flustered. I don't need this blanket. Okay.
Oh, my cheeks hurt from laughing. Also, I mean, I feel like we're touching on a lot of things. I could ask you questions for a million more hours because this is just so interesting to me. But Sana threw out a question, and I don't know how you would feel about that, Kelly, but I know I want to save a little bit of time at the end to kind of come back and talk about your like call to action or like homework challenge for folks who are going to play along. But my thought was like maybe seeing if other folks have questions for you. Sana threw it out and read my mind, not surprised, before I even suggested it. And so if you're cool with that, I can go ahead and read those out. Does that sound okay?
Sure.
Cool.
My wine's on the way, so.
Good. So Sana said you were talking about a little bit of almost like regret in that you didn't have more time, you know, before kind of going full-time, moving out to Nova Scotia, and wish that you had spent less time hustling, more time building that relationship. And Sana threw out a really good point. I'm curious if you've ever thought about this, but she said, do you ever feel like the hustle made the space possible? That is the story we were told. I just wonder if it's your experience. So meaning the hustle then made the space now possible. That's
Yeah.
how, if I'm interpreting that.
No, I totally get that. And that was my mindset when I was
Mhm.
in the thick of it, I guess. Like short-term suffering for long-term gain, basically. Like I don't think well, I also have a tendency to take jobs that don't pay me very well because I like them. So, like I was working at a local yarn store because I loved it, and like they're only going to pay minimum wage because they're a local yarn store, and
Yeah.
so I tend to take like passion over profit.
Which, like, is that so bad? Or like maybe if you can find a balance in that, is that such a bad thing? Or is that another way of
Yeah.
filling your cup?
Scott's
Yeah.
the best.
Thank you. Scott is the best. Scott, do you want to say hi?
Do you want to say hi?
Sure.
We hear you're really good at self-care.
Yeah, I do. I do all the self-care for the both of us.
Yeah.
He has two modes: full send and like full sloth.
Oh.
I'm
That's
either
a
full
good,
throttle or doing nothing.
yeah, go big or go home. That sounds good. Scott, so what does it look like for you to take care of two humans at once? What does that look like?
I smoke a lot of weed.
Hey. Yeah.
But you're
Well,
also like very good at relaxing and like taking time for yourself.
yeah. I think it's because
A lot of weed.
I grew up with doing a lot of labor-intensive jobs. So you're either like full throttle on the job site, and then when it was break time, you just did nothing because you're exhausted. So I think that has translated to current day.
Yeah.
So you're
It
used
sounds
to
like
like
having a
working.
bit. Sorry, go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, just you're used to like working super hard for like your designated amount of time. So like your boundaries of like work time and like rest time are super defined.
Yeah, and whereas I think you are a bit of a workaholic because your jobs are not like super physically intensive, but like mentally they're like exhausting. So I think Kelly can just like push herself all day because it's like mind versus like if it was like a physically intensive job for 14 hours, you probably physically wouldn't be, you'd just die.
Yeah, I would just die. I would cease to exist.
But me, if I had to be on the computer doing like spreadsheets and stuff for any more than 30 minutes, I would die. So like we have our strengths and our weaknesses.
It's funny though, Scott. I don't think I've ever been jealous of like a physically taxing job before, but I'm like, oh, how cool that like you went through your life learning that like, yeah, you go really hard, you do the work, and then your body's so tired, you just have to relax and take that break. Unlike Kelly, who was able to push through for years before being like, help.
Yeah.
Just having a little breakdown over
I just keep her fed, keep her well fed, keep her caffeinated.
You really are my self-care.
Yeah.
And Scott, so is that part of your self-care, taking care of Kelly?
Well, like I'll be treating myself, right? And then I'll be like, I'm not gonna not bring her a snack when I'm making myself a snack. So really it's just.
But he does have like the healthiest work-life balance of like probably anyone that I know.
Yeah.
Because you're like super strict. You're like, I've done a buttload of work. I'm like not doing anything for the rest of the evening. So you'll be like enjoying like a computer game, and then I'll be sitting on the couch just like stressing about everything by myself. Like
I'll just roll my eyes at her and continue playing. Put my mic on.
you're
So
like, just like put something on and like go knit.
There's times where we put something on and I can tell she's like having a hard time just watching
It's
the
bad.
program. I'm like, okay.
You get like annoyed with my inability to relax.
Well, sometimes you get annoyed when I'm relaxed.
Oh yeah, okay. So like another thing is my own issues with being a workaholic sometimes get projected onto the people around me. So like I have super high like unhealthy working standards, I guess. So like when he's taking his self-care time, which is completely justified and healthy, but I'm like, oh my God, there's like so much to do. Like I need to fill this time. And then I'll get like bitter towards him because he's relaxing. So yeah, that's my other like unhealthy thing that I do.
Mm-hmm. It's really funny. Like Scott, I'm so glad that you popped in. One, because I told Michael I put him in the other room and I told him, if you come out, that's fine, but I'm going to make you come into not yet. And I'm laughing because y'all have this same dynamic as we do. Michael is like, I'm done. I'm playing video games. And I'm like, but I could be winding skeins or I could be labeling things. And he'll be like, okay, if you're not going to watch this TV show with me, I'm going to go relax on my own. And I get salty and like, so I feel it. I'm laughing. I'm also glad that y'all have each other to do that and balance each other out.
Yeah, I would probably just be like sitting in a corner, rocking back and forth with like 27 unfinished things around me, like hungry because no one's making me a snack if you didn't exist.
Sometimes when I'm like full sending it, I'll like get in a work mode and it'll be like, oh, 6 hours have gone by and I've barely hydrated or made any food. And then I'm like really hangry at that point. Yeah. So
that's just like my whole life.
So even the king of self-care has faults. He's not perfect.
Yeah. Because what will make it even worse is like Kelly will also not have eaten because no one was there to feed her. So then we'll both be hangry. And I have a bit of a temper sometimes. So I'm just like, where's like make
so
that
hangry.
dinner.
So hangry.
Yeah.
Like the only thing that ever makes you grumpy is when you're hungry.
Yeah.
Anyway, I feel like we totally like sidetracked your
That's
mission.
Okay. Hey, the more people to talk about self-care, the better in my book. People a lot. I don't know why they're laughing. It's funny. If you join late, or I don't know if you heard this at the front end, but there's like a little lag between I know you heard this, Kelly, because you were here.
This is live on YouTube.
Yeah. So I'm talking to the folks on YouTube. There's a little lag. So sometimes people are making comments and like I am in my head quickly trying to figure out like what are they laughing at? And I totally missed it. A lot of people, Sana, Laura, and Darian are all like laughing, yesing. Wendy is responding, and I'm like, I don't know what y'all are laughing at. Darian said yum, and it was when you were talking about something, but I'm pretty sure she was talking about my beer and not why you find it hard to make time for yourself, because that would be
yum.
Speaking of self-care, I'm going to go get some wine for myself and let you ladies finish your
awesome.
life. Bye.
Thank you, Scott.
Bye.
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 That was awesome.
Whoa.
So where and if folks have other questions, like feel free to throw them out there. If we have time, we'll get to them.
Oh, I think we were talking about like the short-term suffering for long-term gain.
Yep.
So I think that like all of the hustling for me, it was kind of worth it because like without those jobs and like without focusing on like saving money and stuff, like we were saving to buy a house so that in the long term, like we could have this lifestyle. So like in the end it worked out, but like it could have been a risk to the relationship and like the relationships with my friends. And like I never got to see my Sip and Stitch group, for example, because I was like always working. And now I'm like, I miss my Sip and Stitch group. But yeah, I guess like sometimes you do have to hustle like crazy to like achieve what you want, and like you have to make sacrifices probably, because like if you want to do your business full time or like you want to buy a house, like you are going to have money to do that. And the only way to make money is to work jobs. And like sometimes you can't find a job that pays $80K a year. So like you have to work multiple jobs in order to do that. And it's a sacrifice, but
it's interesting. Like, it's interesting that we call it a sacrifice, because I'm like, what if we flip that on its head? And what if that was your self-care at the time? Like, I think sometimes we have this notion that like self-care means relaxing or feeling good or like warm and fuzzy. And sometimes like self-care is being hard. Excuse my language. So like at that point in your life, part of your self-care was really hustling and working so that you could have some of the things that were important, like to you. Maybe that was part of it. Maybe it wasn't as balanced as it could have been. But it sounds like now you're at a place where like, oh, I've grown a bit. I'm in a different spot and I can still figure out like how to take care of myself and how to tend to some of the other values that I now have space for because I did that stuff.
That's an interesting take on it. I agree with some parts of it, but I don't think I agree with all of it.
Tell me.
I like what you said about maybe like changing our perspective on what self-care is. Because you mentioned before, like some people just think it's like a bubble bath or like a face mask. And like for me, that's never been self-care. Like I hate baths. I get super bored. And also I don't have a bathtub here. But I don't know. I feel like I had a thought and then it just like went right out of my head. I know I definitely had like blinders on for that period of time because I had a goal and I was like working towards that goal, kind of like no matter what it took, I wanted to get there.
Yeah.
And like now I've reached that goal. So like my current lifestyle is basically like my reward for like hustling so hard, I guess. But now that I have my blinders off, I'm like, wait, like what else is there that I can kind of like explore? What have I been ignoring or like depriving myself of? So I think like self-care for me is like making sure that I am like physically healthy, like getting enough sleep, doing things that like make me happy that don't necessarily make money.
Yep.
That I kind of like lost along the way. Like I don't have a hobby that doesn't make money. When did that become a thing? Like when did we stop doing things for like the sole purpose of like pleasure?
Yeah.
Versus like a way to like further your business or make a couple extra bucks kind of thing. So yeah, I'm still discovering like what self-care is to me, but my like hustle has allowed me to get to that point where I feel like I can take the time to do that. But I'm also like, why couldn't I have found that balance before? Like, what was I doing wrong?
Yeah. Well, it sounds like it's not the working hard and focusing on your goal, even when it meant long hours, that was really a problem. It sounds like the blinders that had you focusing only on that, almost at a detriment or at the expense of some of these other important things in your life. And so now it sounds like self-care has shifted a bit in terms of like, I have to focus on all of these things at once and juggle them. And it's the just getting on one that's not super helpful to like taking care of my full personhood and who I am.
And I think that like, I think a lot of it also falls on society's like view of what your life timeline is supposed to be. Like you're supposed to graduate high school and then go to college and then like start a family, buy a house, like buy a car. And like a lot of these things require a lot of money, but like minimum wage hasn't been keeping up to like the expenses of life. So like we're all hustling so hard trying to like fulfill these like societal requirements almost that are like so outdated now that we put like all this pressure on ourselves to like hit these milestones. But it's like we have to work harder. I don't know. I hope this is making sense. I don't know.
I think so. Also, Tina's here. She said hi. And I'm looking at the clock. I don't want to keep you too long because I know you're an hour ahead. Yeah, it's later there, so you're an hour ahead, right?
Yeah, but I got this full glass of wine.
All right. Well, then we're in no rush. But I know that people really want to hear your homework, challenge, call to action. And I really first want to say and give a little plug for your Creative Roots Challenge, because I think when you launched that, I reached out to you and was like, Kelly, I love what you're doing. I had been thinking about the self-care collaborative for a while because last year I did a self-care cal and it was great. And people posted things like that they were knitting on that made them happy. And I wanted it to be more, but I was nervous and I didn't know. And all the doubt.
Self-doubt just like creeping up in there.
Yeah.
As it does.
Exactly. And I reached out and I was like, Kelly, if you're doing this, I can do this thing. And part of what I think your Creative Roots Challenge helped me figure out was like, how do I get people engaged in more than just like I'm posting pictures so that I can win a prize. And I really love the like weekly prompt from a different maker. Cause like, yeah, I could come up with a bunch and like, that's boring. That's not why people are here.
A lot of work.
Yes. And a lot of work. So part of my self-care was figuring out like, how do I engage the makers I'm interviewing? How do I help them engage like the larger community? And so you kind of helped me shape this call to action homework assignment piece. And I know you came in saying like, I'm not really good at self-care. And so I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your initial thoughts on homework and then maybe like working through what some of the challenges and barriers are and seeing what we come up with. Does that sound okay?
Sure, let's do it.
Cool. So share your initial thoughts. It sounds like it's maybe something that you've tried to do for yourself before, but you're kind of challenged out to the people of what you're hoping they can try and do over the next week or so.
Well, my homework is going to be to take, well, I initially said an hour, but then I started like doubting like if people have that much time. I'm like the kids, like the jobs. Anyway, you can do with this what you wish. So I think that we should all try and take an hour completely for ourselves, entirely guilt-free to do something for yourself that's like your version of self-care. So for me, that might be just like knitting for an hour without like making to-do lists in my brain, like not feeling bad that I'm not doing anything productive, just like relaxing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your question?
Yeah, that's my question. And so does it have to be 1 hour, one solid
consecutively?
Yeah. Can folks break it up into 10 minutes a day or?
That's what I was thinking, because I don't know how many people actually have like the privilege or like the luxury of sitting down for an hour, like uninterrupted. So you could do it like an hour straight, 2 half-an-hour sessions, 4 sessions of 15 minutes, #math. But just like take the time, like don't do anything else. Don't think about anything else. Just like do that one thing, even if it's like a nap, even if it's like a shower, even if you showered like this morning, have another shower if you want to, because showers are very relaxing.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I really need to work on guilt-free downtime. Like that's what I struggle with the most.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my homework.
So I love that idea. So 60 minutes of self-care. I'm going to dig in a little bit here with the part of my brain that heard you saying like, I'm not good at it. That's really hard for me to do, to spend an hour and be guilt-free. And my big question is, why does it have to be guilt-free?
Because the guilt, like ruins it. Because you're not actually taking the time for yourself and relaxing if you're like thinking about other things that you could be doing that you're not doing because you're like sitting there trying to like knit a couple rows, you know? Like it's okay. It's fine to be thinking about other things, but not if it's like making you feel bad about taking that moment for yourself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like the guilt is like, I don't know. It like taints the self-care.
Does that work for you? Like just telling yourself not to feel guilty about it?
Well, I haven't like done the hour yet.
Okay.
But I'm going to. But I think like, so for me, it's a whole like permission thing. So like this self-care collaborative has like given me permission to take that hour. Like I've done a lot of like reflecting and stuff this year, and I've discovered that like that's my own brain. Like that's how my mind works. Like I need the permission, whether it's like Scott ordering me to like sit on the couch and like not be such a spaz, or I don't know. Like that's gonna be my thing going forward, is like giving myself permission to take the time for myself, I guess, because like otherwise I'm not gonna do it, and then we're gonna end up back in like another breakdown, and we don't want that. So
we don't want that. And that I'm glad I pushed on that, because something felt like it wasn't quite clicking there. And so it sounds like, Kelly, the guilt is only really problematic when it takes away the permission that we give ourselves to do things. And I hear you saying, like, I haven't quite figured out yet how to get rid of the guilt. Like telling myself not to feel guilty obviously doesn't work. So part of me is wondering, Kelly, how you would feel. I love the idea that by the end of this collaborative, by the end of 4 months, folks would be able to take any amount of time, even if it's 5 minutes, to do some guilt-free self-care. But I'm wondering if for week 1, the guilt-free part is not as important. Like, I'm wondering if it's take 60 minutes where you give yourself permission to take that time, even if you feel guilty, even if you're sitting there like, oh, I should be doing something else. You can say, all right, thank you for your opinion. Give myself permission to do this thing.
Thank you for your opinion, workaholic self.
Yeah, like, thanks, I didn't ask. I'm going to stay here now. Continue to give yourself that permission.
I love it.
If that's even like the first step to that long-term, because Kelly, I mean, I don't know, maybe people here are watching and know how to do this guilt-free. And like, if you do, tell us your ways, because I'm definitely not there all the time. Maybe sometimes, but definitely not all the time. Krista said, don't feel guilty about feeling guilty. So I like that. And it sounds like that would be a real challenge. So like, can I let the guilt be there and still give myself permission to do it anyway?
For me, like the guilt and the permission are intertwined, I guess.
Yeah.
So like, but this is like for me, like the past year has really given me a lot of reflection time, and I've discovered that like permission and guilt are like dependent on each other. So like if I have the permission, the guilt kind of like goes away.
Okay.
But like I know it's not going to be like that for everyone, but that's just like what I've discovered for myself on my self-care mission.
Yeah.
So like it might, like the permission thing might not work for everyone, but it works for me. It's kind of like setting it on your to-do list. So like the self-care becomes like a task. So if you're super like task oriented, make the self-care like a task that you cross off the list. So you're like, okay, I did this, this, and this. Next up on the list is like 15 minutes of just me time. Cool. Let's do it. And then you can cross it off the list, you know?
Cool. I like it. So 60 minutes, giving yourself permission to take care of yourself. Hopefully some folks get to the point where when they give, like the journey that this year has kind of taken you on, that if, you know, those are kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum for you, that permission and guilt. So if that permission is strong enough, the guilt kind of melts away. And for folks that aren't at that point yet, continuing to give themselves permission, even if there's some guilt there.
I mean, the guilt might not necessarily be an entirely bad thing either. Like kind of what you were saying before, it's like an opportunity to reflect on like why you're guilty.
Yeah.
So if you start to feel that guilt, like why, how did it end up there? Like, what is the reason that this guilt is creeping in? Like, it might help you get to know yourself a little bit better.
Mhm.
Because like before, when I felt guilty, I thought it was bad. Like, I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I feel guilty. Like I shouldn't be doing this. But eventually I was like, okay, I feel guilty, but like, why is this a thing? Like,
Mhm.
I shouldn't be feeling bad about this right now. And
Yeah.
that gave me an opportunity to like go into my brain and be like, what are you even doing? What's
No.
wrong with you?
That feels so helpful though. I think that's helping to put a different set of words on like what's in my head. That getting rid of the guilt didn't work. Like telling the guilt to go away wasn't working. You kind of had to make space for it and like let it be there and look at it and say like, okay, what is this guilt trying to tell me? I'm going to continue to give myself permission to take care of myself and inspect this guilt. And so I like the idea of doing exactly what you're saying. So scheduling, also Wendy, Karen, Sana are all like, yes, schedule it. So maybe schedule 60 minutes, put it in your scheduling system. If that's in your head, plan out in the week, like where are those 60 minutes going to go? If you're a planner person, I assume Sana is just from her Wednesday chats. Put it in your planner, give yourself that permission for 60 minutes. If that gets rid of your guilt, awesome. If it doesn't, listen to what that guilt is trying to tell you and still do the 60 minutes anyway.
And if you're just starting your like reflective journey or your self-care journey, like don't be afraid of the guilt. Kind of just be like, hey, guilt, what's up? Like, let's get to know each other. Why are you here? What are you doing? When did you arrive exactly? And like, how can we get you on your merry way?
I love that. I mean, Kelly, all the time I like talk to clients about our emotions being like small children. Wow, people who like children are really going to hate us. To be honest, like I love children. I probably want to be a mom one day. Like whatever, it is what it is. But I talk to clients a lot how about our emotions are like small children. Like they try and tell us what they're feeling or what's going on. Sometimes they just don't do it in the same way that like our logical adult brain would do it. And like, any of y'all who have children, who know children, who've been in a grocery store with a screaming child, know that like when a screaming child wants something, it screams very loud. And if you try and ignore the child, it screams louder. And so sometimes it's just paying attention to the child, even if you're not giving them the candy bar or whatever they're wanting, but just listening to them and being like, hey, what are you trying to tell me? Sometimes that's enough to actually make the kid stop crying. And that sounds a lot like what you're saying about if you just listen to your guilt, sometimes it tells you something that's really meaningful and like actually makes it move along.
Move along, dear. You're not wanted here anymore. That's how I talk to my guilt.
Hey,
in a British voice.
That is wonderful. A lot of people like to like name their stuff, like, oh, my anxiety has a name or my guilt has a name. And like that can be, I don't know. I think Chelsea.
Like, oh, Harold is back again. Like,
yeah,
oh my God.
Exactly. I think Knitting Tipsy has talked about that. And it works. It's funny. I don't know.
I should try that.
I think if you use a British voice, I think your guilt should at least get a name.
Like Penelope. That seems pretty British. And like kind of like she's a bit of a jerk. but like
Hey,
in a proper way.
she's a proper jerk.
She is a proper jerk. What is going on with my bangs? My face is like so red.
I know. My coloring on my laptop is like very not good, and also I didn't set up my ring light because I so my
Not good.
face also is red. You just can't see it because I look blue, and it's fine.
You're all one shade. And I'm just like white wall, white face, like red cheeks.
People were all about the scheduling. Krista said the analogy. I'm assuming she means crying kid. I don't know. I think in like visual metaphors or analogies. I don't know the difference. And that's like always the image I have. So if it works for you, cool, take it on. Karen said, listen to the guilt and acknowledge what it's telling you. Yes, just acknowledge the crying child and they will stop crying most of the time. Unless something's really, really wrong, and then they probably won't stop crying. And then like, it probably makes sense why you're feeling guilty or anxious or whatever you're feeling. You should probably listen to that. Sana said, yes, Chelsea helped me name my anxiety. She is Gertrude. Gertrude sounds like
Gertrude.
I would want to get rid of. And that is wonderful. Kelly, I know we're a little bit over time. We kind of recap the homework. I'll make a post about it. So folks who didn't get to watch the video, this video we're streaming from Zoom. So I'm hoping that it should save to my YouTube. I think that's the whole point of doing this. So y'all can catch up even if you're not live. I want to say thank you to the viewers. Thank you to our friends. Let's be honest. Live watching us. Thank you if you're watching later. Thank you if you're, I was going to say playing. If you're somehow engaging with the Self-Care Collaborative this year, it feels really important. Like me taking care of myself takes care of this community. Me taking care of the community allows y'all to take care of yourself, and it all comes full circle. So take care of yourselves, take care of each other. Kelly, any last words? I want to thank Kelly, obviously, for coming on here, figuring out the technical issues that I worked through and didn't, because that's how this year and week is going. So thank you for spending time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for inspiring me.
Wisdom.
Thank you for inspiring me as a maker, as a human, as a friend. I don't know. I'm glad that we met, that we got the chance to become the friends we did. I'm glad we're here sharing your knowledge to the world. Lots of folks are saying thank you. Kelly, take us home with some famous.
Oh my God. So much pressure.
Sorry, I just built it up.
This does not align with my self-care.
Hey, what good self-care to practice setting that boundary?
Oh my God.
Anything else you want to say before we say goodnight to all our friends? You can say no. That's okay too.
What is no? Oh my gosh, that's like another thing that I really struggle with, but it's a whole other conversation.
So do you need to say no right now? Is that part of your...
Maybe. Oh, I don't know. Just like, I don't know. Just imagine that I said something profound and helpful.
I love it. I think that's what you did this whole hour and 10 minutes, 11 minutes that we've been...
Maybe like self-care is a journey and not a destination. Like it's always going to be evolving. In every chapter of your life, it's going to look a little bit different. My self-care right now was not the same self-care that I needed a year ago.
Preach.
Roll with the punches.
Preach.
It's always darkest before the dawn. No.
I love that. I love that this is not something that you do and you check off and you arrive at. It's a choice. It's a journey. You're always making it. And I think that sounded like a plug that when this happens next year, which I'm already hoping it happens next year, you're also going to come back and be my like annual first guest and talk about how your self-care journey has changed over the last year and what it looks like for you then. I think that's what it sounded like.
How I can now, future 1 year from now, Kelly now takes 2 hours a day of self-care guilt-free. And it's amazing.
Hey, I love it.
We'll see. We'll see.
And maybe not. And that's
She's no longer a workaholic. She's fully recovered. Will it ever happen?
we'll see.
Maybe I won't go as red next year.
You can just come and use my lighting because then you'll look like a
Like all one color. Will Giraffe be? Oh my God. Will Giraffe be there next year though?
Giraffe will be here. Giraffe followed me from Texas. Giraffe and Frog or Gecko weigh in. Where's this gecko? Were part of my decor that I bought in Texas, thinking like, I'm just going to be here for a year and then I'm going to sell all my stuff. And then I loved my stuff so much. It made me happy that I decided to keep all of it and drive across the country with all of my things, including Giraffe and Frog Gecko. Dude.
I actually kind of might like envision Gecko as what my guilt looks like.
He does look
just like staring at me all judgy with his big eyes, being like, hey, you know you have like 3 other things you could be doing right now though, right?
Mm-hmm. And then Giraffe is like British. If your British self has a name that's like, I don't care.
Gecko, please have a seat. I do not care about your opinion
Exactly
in
what
this
that means.
current moment.
Kelly, I'm
Okay.
never going to be able to look at those. Those paintings were part of my self-care, and now they will become even more of a part of my self-care.
I'm so sorry. I take it back.
No, it's wonderful. Don't take it back. Wendy says it's a gecko. I think it's a gecko too.
A gecko? Okay.
I don't know.
Harold and Penelope. Okay, I'll stop like distracting you from trying to log off now.
If we could be here all night, this would just, people would be like, all right.
I know. Eventually, like you have to cut yourself off because
Yeah.
like I could talk to you forever. So
Yeah, pretty much. But that we need to leave more for next year. So that's all.
okay.
Okay.
I'm done blabbering on now.
Okay.
Well, I'm really looking forward to seeing everyone's hour or 15-minute increments or 30-minute increments.
Yes, same. Post about it. Take a picture. Either doing it, show us what you did, tag me. I don't know if Kelly wants you to tag her. Maybe.
Yes, tag me. Okay, also like tiny side note, during the hour, I'm wondering if it would be like beneficial or like interesting for people to include like what feelings come up for them while taking the hour.
Yes.
Like, do you have the guilt?
Yes.
Do you have relief?
Yes.
Do you have like good feelings, like good job? Yeah.
Yep.
Do you have like worry, stress? I feel like I want to know how people are feeling when they're taking their time.
Yep. I love that, Kelly. That like was like the cherry on top of like, yes, spend 60 minutes, give yourself permission for that time, and
Feel all the feels
yes, check in
and
with
report back.
yes, the good, the bad, share it, post about it. If you don't share it, just reflect on it. Let us know. We're curious. We want to know. So tag us. And I'm super excited. And that doesn't just have to be for this week. Like I'm saying that's this week's challenge, but like I hope you do that forever and continue to tag me forever. Yeah.
I love it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you, Kelly. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks for having me.
Bye.